Good evening, everyone. My name is Derek Rickey. I am the president at the Park Rapids Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening for an information session on the presidential primary and each of the party's caucuses coming up here as we prepare for election season. I want to start by thanking our panelists for their time this evening. It's great to have all of you here, and we really appreciate your expertise and insight so that all of us can learn more about our civic duties, be more engaged and involved in the various ways. So Brian Hobson is here from DFL. Thank you, Brian. Karen White, who is the president of the League of Women Voters, our host. And then Tim Humphrey, with GOP. So thank you all for being here. I want to share just a little bit about my journey as we get started here. I've had the opportunity now to be in my role at the Chamber for about a year and a half. And one of the greatest learning opportunities for me has been what it means to be an advocate for business. And through that learning process, I've discovered and educated myself on the importance of picking good candidates. I think so often we, from a general public standpoint, get focused on the election, on just the election date. And unfortunately, so many of those decisions happen long before that. And we miss out on that process and the opportunity sometimes to be more engaged. And it's been a great opportunity for me personally to learn about that importance of picking good people from both parties, from our communities, making sure we have the best possible people leading our governments at city, county, township, state, and the federal level. So it's really a pleasure to have each of you here. I'm excited to be involved and for everything that we're going to learn this night. Before I turn it over to Carolyn, I do want to remind everyone, if you need to use the restroom while we're going, please feel free to get up and go right through this door, and the bathrooms are actually located right back here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn. And again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for coming. Just a quick reminder, League of Women Voters is 104 years old this year. We started right after the amendment that made it possible for women to vote, and our job is to educate voters. And that's what this program does. We also remind you that League is a nonpartisan organization. We talk about issues, we advocate, and we educate about issues, but we never pick a candidate. We never endorse a political party. We just want to make sure that the citizens and the voters know how to get the information and what the process is. So this evening, our state league has a couple of paid staff people, so they did a good job of putting together a PowerPoint with the important parts about how we pick a presidential nominee. And Minnesota just started having a presidential nominating primary. And a lot of the times, we think the process that voters use to pick our presidents, it's just election day, like Derek was saying. But it starts now. You could actually go today and vote in your presidential nominating primary because of early voting in Minnesota. So it's actually, you can go tomorrow morning and do this. And the main thing with the primary is, it is an election. The day of the nominating primary is March 5th. That's the last day you can vote, technically. Early voting began last Friday on the 19th. And the results of this nominating primary may affect who's going to appear on your ballot in November. There's something to remember, is that this is not an election, it's election-ish, meaning that this is a party process. Our county is running the elections, they have the election judges, they count the ballots, all of the mechanics of it. But who's on the ballot and how they're doing this is a party process. And what they're trying to do is that it informs each political party which candidate to support at their national convention. And that's where this is going. So first step is, somebody decides they want to run for president, they want to become a candidate, and they start raising money and all of that. And we've heard that in the news for the last year now already. They started early. Second step is the candidate picks the political party they want to be affiliated with. Now, we know most of them have been with a certain party for a long time before they get to be there. But they need to be part of this presidential nominating primary and be on the ballot in March. So they have to contact the party chair of the state. And then the third step is the party chair decides which of the candidates will appear on the ballot on their party ballot. And they can decide whether people can mark an undecided or an uncommitted vote too, or they can have a write-in. And the party chairs then select that list of candidates to go to the Secretary of State's office, who prints up the official ballots. The fourth step is the voters go to the polls, either at the courthouse and cast your ballot early. You can get an absentee ballot, vote from home, or you can go on March 5th to your regular polling place and get the ballot. And step 4, the second part of it is the voting in the nominating primary is very similar to voting in any other election you've been in. The only significant difference is that the presidential nominating primary is that you have to tell the election official, the election judge, when you go up, which party ballot you want. When Minnesota does its own little primary, its own state primary, all the parties are on one ballot and you just have to stay in your right column. But in this one, you have to tell them, I want a Democratic ballot, the legal marijuana party ballot, or the Republican ballot. And they give you just one piece of paper, so you can't make a mistake that way. The election officials then at the end are going to tabulate these results just like always, and the votes are counted separately for each party. And then they're reported to the public and to the party chairs. The next part is the parties then decide which delegates they're sending to their national convention. And the delegates support the nominees for the candidates based on the result of each party's primary. It doesn't mean that's the only thing, because the national conventions have different rules in each party, and so they're going to decide, maybe they do 3 or 4 ballots and you have to stick to the one that won your state. But after a while they may say, no, you can vote for whatever's going on. And it's the convention that finally decides who's on that party ballot. So it's not like if we vote in all of the 50 states and say so-and-so is the party nominee for the Democrats, and so-and-so is the Republican Party nominee, that's who it's going to be. The convention delegates get to decide. And then each party announces that nominee based on the delegate vote. Election officials do not make your party preference public. So whatever ballot you pick up when you go in to vote, nobody's going to know except the people in that party. The law requires that the states share your party preference with the chair of the party that you choose. This is because the parties need to know who voted in their presidential nominating primary. And remember, this is a political party process, not a traditional election. Typically, the parties use this information to build voter contact lists and for campaign purposes. How you vote, such as the candidate you vote from, and if you submitted a write-in candidate or not, is not public interest information and will not be shared with even the party chairs. So your vote for the candidate is secret, but your party preference isn't. Some frequently asked questions. What happened to the caucuses we used to have? It was only 4 years ago that we had our first party presidential nominating primary. Before, it was all caucuses where you had to go on a specific night to your caucus, and they took sort of a straw poll and decided on nominee and how many delegates and who was getting the preferences and stuff like that. The party still runs those caucuses because that's where all the party work gets done as to who's going to be the leaders, what are the main issues, the organizing down to the county and precinct level, clear up to the state level. So the caucuses are still there. It's just you don't get to vote for your presidential nominee. And do you have to be 18 to vote in a presidential nominating primary? Yes. But if you're 18 on March 5th, you can go ahead and vote. Even an early vote. You don't have to wait until that March 5th. So, young people, now's your chance. And I don't see one in the audience, so all of your grandchildren or great-grandchildren or the neighbor that shovels your lawn, if they're 18, tell them that they can vote on March 5th. Okay, and we'll answer questions at the end, so Tim, why don't you go ahead and tell how the GOP runs that caucus.
Good evening. Glad to see all you made it out this evening. Caucuses. There's a huge chunk of the population that's not aware of what the caucus actually does. What is the purpose of a caucus? And really it's a very important part of our democratic process. It's basically the lowest grassroots form of government that we can get involved with to help make the decisions for our party, for our nation, for all of the elections at every level. Okay, sorry. And I've only been involved since 2016, and I went to my first caucus then. And then in 2020, I actually was the convener of our caucus. And what happens at the caucus is everybody will come in from the precincts of a given party. DFL will have one, GOP will have one, and you come in and you sit in your precinct area. So we're going to have a table for each township essentially. I'll be up in LaPorte. That'll be the caucus that I'll be convening. And so you'll sit in your respective tables with people from your precinct, and then we will choose delegates. Now, what the delegates and alternates get to do that are elected at this is they get to go then to their next level of government, essentially. So they choose to be involved. If I was going to be a delegate, then I would go to my BPOU, which would be Hubbard County. They have a convention where they gather together, and then of the delegates from the local precincts, they can choose to be a delegate at the state level. So they'll have a state convention as well, and then you can choose to go on to be a national delegate as well. So there's different levels, but the basic level will be what we're going to do in February. So on February 27th, I'll be in LaPorte. I believe DFL, I don't know if you're aware of the precinct up there. If they have, generally at the LaPorte school, they have a caucus as well, same night.
Yes, both will be in LaPorte.
Okay.
LaPorte School.
Okay. So anyhow, at any given time, we'll choose the delegates first. That's the process. And then we will look at the potential candidates for that year. So this year, as Carolyn had mentioned, we don't look at the presidential candidate because we have the primary now in Minnesota. But any other office that's available, whether it be House reps, senators, federal level, state level, the governor, attorney general, all of those positions, we will then look at the candidates, and they can either show up in person, they can call us, they can send a surrogate to give a speech to us, what their views are. Most of the time they send us a pamphlet. I think going forward more are going to use Zoom, that type of thing. And then we'll do a straw poll to determine who we support at that level. So everybody at the LaPorte precinct would then, say, okay, GOP, we want X candidate to be our choice. And so then those results get combined with the other caucuses in Hubbard County, and they're combined, and then they go to the state level. So all the results from the state that night then get tabulated. So it's like a mini election, but it tells the party who the people involved in the party are supporting at that time. Candidates can still continue to run afterwards and everything, but once the party supports them, then that's where the party's money goes to. Individuals can still support a separate candidate on their own, and they can run on the ballot still. But once the candidate once the candidate is determined at the caucus levels and the conventions, then the party puts all their efforts into that one candidate. So, I guess if anybody has questions?
Issues or anything?
Issues as far as?
Yeah, do they have resolutions and things like that?
Oh, right, yes, definitely. So, another thing that we do at the caucus is we look at the party's platform. So if this is the opportunity for anybody that may think that the party is kind of going down the wrong path. One of the policies on the party platform may have been there for 60 years or whatever, and you think that it needs to change with the times. You can propose a resolution, and then that would get submitted to the next level, where then they look through all the resolutions that come from caucus night, and then they can take that up to the state convention and everything like that. A lot of times after the caucus, statewide, there may be 20 resolutions statewide that come in, and 4 or 5 of them might be the same topic. So then at the state level, then they can consolidate those. It's like everyone is a rough draft. So then they put them together, change some verbiage, and then at the state convention, then they vote if they want to change the party platform. So whether, it might be on healthcare or whatever, whatever the stance is of the party, if you feel that the party is going a different direction than you want, that's your opportunity to propose a resolution to change that, or to bring to attention, like, we need to go this direction now, so.
Super.
Well, thank you for the invitation tonight. And I don't have a lot to add because my 2 colleagues up here have pretty much covered the basics for sure. The DFL follows a fairly similar, almost entirely similar process to the GOP, which was well described by Tim over here. And the caucuses, again, are on the 27th of February. And the DFL in Hubbard County has 4 caucus locations. Now, as Tim mentioned, there are a lot of precincts. In Hubbard County right now, there are 37 precincts. And even though there's not that many townships, there are 37 precincts because Hubbard County is split between Congressional District 8, CD8, and Congressional District 7. Some of the townships are split, so that's why there is there's more precincts than there are townships. But here are the 4 locations. We have a location in LaPorte School as well. I think we're in the library and you all are in the commons, if I remember correctly. It doesn't really matter because there will be signs.
Yes, there will.
We have a location at Nevis School. We have a location at Helga Township Town Hall. And we have a location in Park Rapids High School. Now, almost universally, and if you really want to know specifics, I can give them to you. Almost universally, you should go to the location that is geographically closest to you. That is almost always the way it works. And again, I have a list of townships and precincts. If you do want to know precisely where you would go, let me know. I can give it to you. But similar to the GOP process, this is the basic grassroots level. This is neighbors talking to each other, neighbors deciding what is best for them, neighbors writing resolutions. Resolutions, as was described, are the basic building block of a party platform. So, and Tim described it very well. The basic building block then goes to the next level, a county convention. So a party convention at the county level. The party convention for the DFL will be in March, and it will also be at LaPorte School. We get to do 2 things at LaPorte School. It's fun. I mean, I'm there most days, so it's fun for me. Yes, and so the basic building blocks are the resolutions, and resolutions can almost, the sky's the limit. But with the awareness that as resolutions go further on, the delegates at the convention at the county level get to vote on it, and then the delegates at the state convention get to vote on it, and then the delegates, and they do get passed on to the national level. Generally, when we're talking grassroots, when the resolutions get to the state level, they don't stop there, but that can form the priorities of the state legislature, if it's the party at the state legislature. So some of the legislation that happened this past session would have come from the priorities put forth in resolutions. So this really is the basic level of being involved in party politics. Now, I know a lot of people say, "Eesh, party politics, gross." I get it. That being said, this is the basic level to get involved. If you tend to agree with policies that might be, that generally Republicans would appreciate, then this is the way to get involved at the basic level. If you tend to agree with policies and priorities of the DFL, then this is the level to get involved with them, or with that party. So it really is the basic level. Also at the caucus is when people who are interested, so at the county convention is the place where all the county leadership for the DFL would be elected, electing an executive board for the county unit, as well as the county convention doesn't do as much nominating for offices as maybe the Republican county convention does. I'm not totally aware, but we have an intermediate. We have a Senate district convention, which is, so for us in Park Rapids right here, we live in Minnesota Senate District 5, and we live in Minnesota House District 5A, whereas the northern third-ish of Hubbard County is in Senate District 2 and Minnesota House District 2B. So it's a little confusing when it comes to that. So that's why we in Hubbard County, there's a lot of, after 2020 and the redistricting, that's when it got real kind of confusing. The 2022 election was the first year that was implemented, so we're only 2 years, well, not even 2 years into these new districts, so understandable if it's a little confusing. And there are maps out there, like the Secretary of State has some pretty easy maps to look at, so if you go to the Secretary of State's website and you click on the maps for the wherever, Hubbard County, you won't see Hubbard County, it's like, because it's split, so you have to click on, 5A if you're in the southern part of the county, 2B if you're in the northern part of the county. And remember, this is not a Senate election year, so we will only have Minnesota House candidates to vote for this time around. Is that enough information for me? I felt like I talked way too long. Okay. Well, I guess that's about enough for me to say.
All right, so thank you, all three of you. Great base foundation. Now we get to hear questions from the audience. So our game plan is, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll come around and hand the microphone to you. We ask that you speak into the microphone so that a recording can hear you as well as our panelists up here. So anybody with an initial question for our panelists?
I think we all know there aren't just Democrats and Republicans. There are many, many people running that are not necessarily under those. And how do we get that information out and about so people clearly understand that there are various ways to vote? It doesn't have to be by a particular party at this point, like we're talking about.
I'll take that one. Technically, the legal marijuana party also has a presidential nominating primary. I don't know whether they have a group here in Hubbard County or not, but if you go on the Secretary of State's website or go to Vote 411, which is what the League of Women Voters runs, it will get you to the same spot where you can say, what's on my ballot? And you put in your address, and it will print out a sample ballot for you, and you'll see who's running in each one of for the DFL presidential primary, for the GOP, and for the legal marijuana party. Now, I think someone told me there's like 20 candidates on the DFL presidential nominate. It's a lot, because a lot of people can get on there. So when you look at your ballot, don't be surprised that there are a lot of people you may not know anything about. That's one of the things that people like voting at home for, is they get that ballot and then they say, oh, now I can research these people because I know what their names are. But you can get a sample from the Secretary of State's website too, and that helps you prepare. The other thing is that if you vote from home, you will be sent all 3 ballots, but you only pick one party and return one. If you return more than one, they will discount your vote. And they will tell you that, so you get a chance to correct it. Yeah. Right now, the local candidates don't have a primary. And after the nominating conventions, sometime in August, we have a Minnesota primary. And that one, you have all the parties on one ballot. You just have to stay in your right column. But you don't have to declare on that one. That answer the question, Florence?
Just fine for me. Thank you.
Additional questions?
I have a question for Cece, actually. There was a law change in order to allow for automatic registration. How does that affect the primary?
I think the automatic voter registration is not being implemented quite yet. The idea is that when you register to get your driver's license, when you interact with, say, Medicaid or SNAP or something like that, where you have to give your information to a government bureaucracy, that those databases can talk to each other and say, oh, you can register to vote too, because you're also, and they check whether you're a citizen in those databases, and they will register you to vote if you're eligible. But I don't think that's working right now. If you're not sure you're registered, if you have moved, changed an address, changed your name, go ahead and go to the Secretary of State's website again, and you can check to find out if you are registered and if you have to make any changes in it.
Anyone else?
One more additional question, but I'll let them go first.
For the nominating, or for the thing on March 5th, will each of the polling places be open like they would for a regular election? So if I go to Emma Township, would I go to Emma Township Hall to vote?
I think most of the regular polling places will be open. There are some townships in Hubbard County that vote only by mail because they don't get enough judges, election judges, or they have so few people in their township on that. If you're not sure, just call the county and Kay Rave's office, the county auditor, and they'll make sure you know which one is the right one. They're really good about answering voters' questions.
I have a question for both Tim and Brian, and that is, so all of us are now smarter for having listened to what the three of you presented. My question is, how will much of this information be communicated to the general public about the caucus dates and how to attend and get involved in that sort of thing? You know, I think our goal of this evening is to spread awareness and educate. How do we continue to build on this event in advance of that February date?
Great question, and actually that's why I wanted to kind of be involved with this too when I heard that they were going to put this on. It's one of those things, we were speaking before we even got started here, that they don't teach you in school. Like, they don't talk about this process. You know, it's just, you know, you hear about it on the news after the fact. Oh, last night was the caucus for, you know, whatever candidates or whatever party, and that is a great question, though. How do we get the public to be more informed in this process? This is the first step. It's a great step. You know, and I encourage everybody to, you know, at coffee in the morning or at the water cooler at work, you know, speak with your fellow coworkers, you know, tell them about the caucus, February 27th. You know, you don't have to commit to anything while you're there. You know, just being there. You can sit off in the corner, you can choose to be an observer. I don't know if that's an option with you guys with the DFL. When you get there, you don't have to choose if you want to be a delegate or an alternate. You can say, I just want to be an observer. And in fact, you know, if somebody's not old enough to vote, they can still go there, be an observer. They can be outside of the precinct, still go to the caucus, choose to be an observer. You know, we've had, at the two caucuses I was at, we had high school kids that were there that were actually doing papers on it. So they were doing some research project, how the business was conducted at the caucus. So it's a great question, though. How do we get more people involved? You know, it seems so minute, the effects of it, but it's the starting process. It gets the ball rolling, and we have, you know, several months here before we actually get to the actual election, but each time it's important.
I agree with all of that. We really are kind of practicing a kitchen sink approach, as in everything and the kitchen sink approach. You know, you try and put it out there on social media, you try and put it out in papers, you try and get announcements on the radio. All of that stuff does cost a little bit of money, so we have to outlay some money in order to make sure that folks know to show up. And this program is an amazing step in that process, and I see Park Rapids Enterprise here, so I'm certain that will reach a number of people. I'll tell you, Cece alluded to it, but after 2016, when the caucus was no longer a place with a primary, rather a presidential straw poll, we stopped getting as many people, and that's just the nature of it. If folks don't see the value in going to the caucus, they're not likely to go out on a cold February evening. So the value of going to the caucus is to be part of the grassroots, to make sure that you are part of the decisions being made in a party. And we live in a two-party governmental system at the moment, and so that is how to become involved. It really is.
And I'll just add my 2 cents to it. It's being live streamed now, and video, we've got another backup video, which, if everything works right, will be up on YouTube, and we'll have a link like on the chamber website. I'll give these guys a link for their websites, email it out to everybody that I've got email for, and hopefully people will just keep sharing that information around to their neighbors.
Someone watching the live stream is asking, does the League of Women Voters have a Facebook page with the important local dates and locations?
We have a Facebook page, and that will be up this weekend. Thank you.
The League of Women Voters has.
Yeah.
He can't be heard when he doesn't speak into the...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the League of Women Voters has a Facebook page, and we will put all the important dates up there. And the Enterprise did a really nice job of getting a graphic with all the important dates on it, too. I may steal that.
I'm asking for a friend. The friend is aligned with one party, but is interested in voting for the other party. Will that mess things up? Do you understand my question?
You want me to do that, or you want to do that?
Well, I guess you have to follow up with different questions. We can talk about the caucus, but I think she's referring to the primary.
Primary.
In the primary, when you pick your ballot, when you ask the judge to pick your ballot and stuff, you're sort of saying that you adhere to that party's resolutions and their line of thinking. So if you decide to switch parties, that's fine. And nobody can stop you from doing that. You just can't vote in more than one. And if you go back in the primary, in the regular election and vote for a totally different candidate, nobody's gonna know. But the idea is that this is a party election. So technically, you should vote in the election that you have the strongest interest in.
You had alluded to attending the caucuses closest to you, but if you're, I just live right across the county line in Wadena, so I would have to go to become delegates and all that kind of stuff. I most likely should go to my own county's caucus and not try to just come here into the Park Rapids School, even though I would maybe submit some resolutions here. If I would want to be a delegate, let's say, or something, I should most likely go to
You want me to answer?
the caucus has my precinct.
Yeah, technically you'd have to go to the county that you reside in. So whatever township you're in, you'd have to find what precinct would then have your caucus. Even though you may be closer to Park Rapids or whatever, you would have to go to your county. Because at the end of the day, if you become a delegate or anything, then in order to vote, you have to be a constituent in that precinct.
Okay.
So it does go by your address.
I should have made that clear. If you live in Hubbard County.
Well, yeah, it caught me off guard.
No, we understood.
Where would they find that information? The precinct and is that Secretary of State? Is that county website?
For the caucuses? Our caucus location should the Secretary of State.
Use your microphone.
Sorry.
Table talk. Apologies, I am not entirely sure whether caucus locations are published at the Secretary of State's website, but I'm guessing Anna Mae knows.
I know that all of the caucuses in Wadena County will be in Wadena.
Wait, yeah.
Oh, I can relay it. Go ahead, Anna Mae.
I know that all of the caucuses in Wadena County will be in Wadena. I don't know the site for sure, but
In the town of Wadena, probably at one of the schools would be my guess. So if you live in Wadena County now, caucuses, what Secretary of State's, I'm thinking Denise might have an answer.
So I believe that'll be available on February 7th on the Secretary of State website. You can just put in your address and it'll tell you where your precinct is and where you should be going. You can also go to dfl.org now and find out that information.
If you're going to a DFL caucus, and I'm assuming,
Yes, GOP as well. Yeah, actually, to follow up with her response, so per state law, the caucuses need to be determined, I believe it was by February 7th, so that's when it'll be available on the website, so.
Good.
I do have a list if you're super interested. I can tell you where the DFL caucus sites are. And you know, just for Hubbard County.
Any other questions from the audience? Going once, going twice. Anything our panelists want to add before we wrap up for the evening? All right. With that, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate your interest and your involvement in setting course locally and as a country. So we appreciate your attendance here, and we hope you have a great evening and a great week ahead. Thank you.
And I'd just like to add my thanks to Derek and the Chamber for helping us. This really helps, and for both Tim and Brian for being really great to work with to get all these details put together. And I'm looking forward to more cooperation with this group.
Super.